Шановні гості, просимо вас займати місця в залі трошечки щільніше. Пані та панове, розпочинаємо засідання 6-ї дискусійної платформи «Гендер в освіті та роль медіа в інформаційно-просвітницькій діяльності щодо гендерних питань». Представляємо модераторку Олену Фроляк, головну редакторку інформаційної служби ICTV. А також запрошуємо спікерів та спікерок дискусійної платформи. Світлана Voitsekhovska, народна депутатка України, співголова міжфракційної організації «Рівні можливості», голова підкомітету з питань законодавства про статус народного депутата України Комітету Верховної Ради України з питань регламенту та організації роботи Верховної Ради України. Hreba, заступник міністра освіти і науки України. Larysa Denysenko, правозахисниця, письменниця, журналістка. Jehmu Greene, журналістка, політикиня, екс-президентка жіночого медіа-центру. Інна Кузнецова, головна редакторка Київського бюро «Радіо Свобода». Тетяна Кузнєцова, деканка факультету журналістики Національного університету Одеська юридична академія. Слово надається модераторці Олені Фроляк.
Доброго дня, шановні пані і панове.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was just in the hall and I read the first Congress of Ukrainian women, and I think to myself,
Незалежність. Ми вже відсвяткували чверть століття, а жінки збираються вперше. Слухайте, ну цю проблему нам треба всім разом вирішувати, і давайте будемо збиратися двічі на рік. Я вас всіх вітаю. Я дуже рада, краще пізно, ніж ніколи. Я думаю, дуже важливо розпочинати цю
discussion now, better late than never, because now we are going through tough times and we have to come out of the shadows. We have to speak louder about ourselves, and we have to be more active in the work of rebuilding our country and its development. I was thinking a lot on how should I begin my speech. I won't take too much of your time about gender stereotypes. I have a mother who is a very wonderful and talented woman. And sometimes I think if she received a very nice education, she would probably become a designer, a journalist. She could become a very famous person, but my grandma always told her the same phrase. Nina, you have to find yourself a good man. And sometimes she has received a school education. She brought up two wonderful children, but I know that my mother would have reached much greater heights if she wasn't told that sometimes that what's important is to find a good man, because finding a good man is our natural thing, but also nature has given us many other strength. We are responsible, multifunctional. Once I told my man that I did a great amount of wonderful, great things, 80 things, and he couldn't believe that. And I know that women can do many things well. We can do a lot more than we think. We shouldn't be afraid. We should be more active in that. Sometimes a wonderful politician
Колишній президент Ізраїлю Шимон сказав взагалі, що найбільша проблема взагалі конфліктів на Близькому Сході – це неосвічені жінки. Це те, що чоловіки їх не пускають
women
здобувати
because
освіту.
men
Тому що
don't let
вони
them go and
бояться,
get
що
education
освічена
because
жінка –
they're
це
afraid that
величезна сила.
an
Освічена,
educated
активна
woman,
жінка,
an
яка,
active woman is a great
яка рветься в бой. І от всі
danger.
проблеми, ви розумієте, я навіть аналізувала от зараз, ви бачите, що робиться в світі. Активізуються різні фундаменталістські рухи, активізуються націоналістичні рухи, активізуються ліві рухи. І все це до чого йде? Все це до чого веде? Ви знаєте, хто взриває часто пояса хто? Шахідки? Це неосвічені жінки. І світ зараз хоче рухатися знов туди, де панувала неосвічена жінка. Тому нам з вами треба все робити для того, щоб цього не сталося. У нас панель називається «Освіта і медіа». Чесно вам скажу, що
Panel is called Education and Media. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that both in the world and in the media, there is no lack of women. I am an editor of the information service on ICTV, and I come to our newsroom and I have to send to filming in some dilapidated village where they're knee-deep in mud, and I tell them, guys, we have to go to film, and I have 70% of women in my newsroom. And one of my girls has to wear boots and go film. And why? Because the man is either in the editor's room, in the director's seat, or a host, and I'm not done yet. There's situation in our newsroom, but in general, on ICTV, a lot of women leaders, women heads who lead departments, and the ICTV in the media role and how to promote women to leading positions. They should be an example. We should be an example. There are a lot of women in the media, but not a lot of women in leading positions, and we have to strive to that because the role of women in the media is very big. And according to the data of the National Women's Fund, on the leading positions of media in the world, there are a lot of women there. 4% in Japan, 34% of women in the media. On the first pages of global newspapers, only 65 are dedicated to, not enough are dedicated to women. And the problem about education, I'm not working in education, but believe that in education there are a lot of women still, and we have to change the situation so that men were taught by men taught all these traditional female subjects, and women became headmistresses. And what do I want to say the most is both media and education, coming back to repeat, they don't like women, but we should fight this rampant crime and the low quality video product that has filled our airwaves, because let's agree, quite often there's nothing to see on TV. And we as women have this to change this practice, because I often see this abroad. There's not a lot of crime news. They don't relish in this criminal news. They relish in other things. There's a lot of music, a lot of culture. The professors are heroes there, and our heroes are killers, and those who have shamed someone, we have to fight that. And women who the women could change things a lot in this. And the latest issue of the New Times, I read an interview with the famous director, and the cultural layer of the humanity which separates us from barbarism is very thin, and this cultural layer should be broadened everywhere. That's why let us watch a video and move on with our discussion. This is a small Ukrainian girl. She is a schoolgirl. Back in kindergarten, she saw only women as nursery teachers. In school, she is taught mostly by women. The few female teachers are the headmaster, PE teacher, and maths teacher. Women teach mostly humanitarian sciences, and men mostly
У підручнику маленька українка зустрічає у 2-3 рази більше згадувань про чоловіків, ніж про жінок.
2 times more men than women.
Жіночі і чоловічі образи у підручниках різняться. Перших наділяють турботливістю, слабкістю, чутливістю. Других – допитливістю, силою, сміливістю.
And sensitive, and men are
У
curious and
підручниках жінки
strong and
згадуються у
brave.
1,5 рази частіше за чоловіків, як виконавці
Female are
домашніх справ.
mostly
Дівчатка частіше вдома.
are mostly shown at
Кухо
home,
варять, а хлопчики
sewing,
не вдома.
cooking,
На стадіоні,
and boys
на
are
рибалці.
outside on the stadium catching
Удома
fish.
маленька українка
Home, the
бачить по
small
телевізору
Ukrainian woman
рекламу з
sees
ідеалом жінки.
an ad with an
Одяг,
ideal of a woman.
макіяж, прикраси,
Thin,
увага принца у сяючих обладунках.
Thin, she's thin, she wears makeup, she has the attention of a
Маленька
prince
українка
in
стане
shining armor.
дорослою.
The small Ukrainian girl will
Якою?
become a grown-up Ukrainian woman. What kind of a woman will she be?
Я думаю, всім
Well, I think
знайомі
everybody knows these stereotypes,
і вони до
and
всіх наших
they
життів
are still present in our
Ну,
lives.
що ж, мені дуже
Well,
приємно
I'm very
спілкуватися
glad
зараз з
to
нашими
talk to
учасниками
our
нашої
participants
панелі. Я
of
би
our
дуже
panel,
хотіла,
and I
щоб
would
ви
like
розпочали нашу
for our
дискусію.
discussion to be began by Svitlana Voitsekhovska. What should we do to break these stereotypes?
На-кінець-то прийшла справа до освіти. І не тому, що
Like
вона
finally we're talking education, and it's in the bottom of the budget
що всі ці 2 дні ми слухали
among
з
all
вами
of the items, but that's a joke. Well, so far we have been talking about many issues concerning society. It relates to political activity and women's activity,
і так далі. І все
women's involvement in economy, and this panel is very timely
тому що
because it helps us do a kind of a wrap-up.
про які ми говорили
All of the things we have been talking over the last couple of days
знаходяться там, звідки ми всі прийшли із дитинства.
are found in our origins, childhood, kindergarten, high school, then university,
І ще з такого соціального інституту, як засоби масової інформації.
and also mass media.
Говорити про засоби масової інформації, в нас є професіонали.
I would not speak about the mass media myself, there are people more knowledgeable about that. I better speak of education right now.
Сьогодні зібралися не тільки для того сказати, що які ми класні.
We're not here to say how good we are.
Тому що маленька
Yes, we are
компанія
good.
наша довела, що вона може робити такі великі
A
речі.
small company of ours proved they are capable of doing a big thing like this Congress. It makes me proud. The Prime Minister of the Ukraine speaks about the gender competitiveness of students. That means something is moving on. That's extremely important. Every little step we make proves that it's a better thing that we had before.
Освіти наше не робить реформ.
I would not say that the Ministry of Education of this country is outside the reforms process.
Звичайно, багато сьогодні робить для того, щоб
The ministry is in fact doing a lot to change the mentality. They implement reforms in the high school education, preschool education, step by step. They analyze textbooks and curricula, and they provide new subjects, new upbringing techniques.
є в нас гендерні студії в вищих навчальних
We do gender clinics in universities now.
безпосередньо НГО.
But all of those are mostly NGO initiatives. There is no government program on that.
Дуже дорогий, буду говорити про те, про втрачені можливості, які ми
So I have to speak about lost opportunities.
а зараз Міністерство освіти є ініціатор.
The Ministry of Education has initiated educational reform across the board.
Цих реформ ми маємо
And initially, we have to look at things comprehensively so that later on in the Parliament, we would not have to modify what has been decided. These reforms in education should not be gender blind. We need to make our kids aware of that, otherwise no changes will ever happen. No matter what success stories we highlight, and no matter what congresses we hold, firstly we have to change the mindset. Yesterday, a colleague from Caucus said that each reform is about changing the mentality, the mindset of future generation.
Неодноразово
And over the last couple of years, we have repeatedly discussed that. We know the score. Can we make it happen? Right now, we cannot. I've got a 30 years track record in this sector, and I can tell you that every reform requires a human effort and a lot of funding. We need to review all of the preschool programs, and we need to release new textbooks. All of that will cost a lot. Is that a global concern? Yes, our colleagues said that this problem is found in all countries of the world. But one thing is clear. We gotta start with the preschool setting. We have to make changes to the existing programs. We have to teach future teachers differently, and also we need to modify retraining, requalification programs for teachers. If you offer them a better pay, it's not the solution. If you set up new types of high schools, it's not the way. You just gotta change the mindset of teaching personnel, and that's the most difficult thing to do. I can quote some statistics. Gender upbringing is never mentioned in the existing government program, and that suggests that the subject is an elective. We've got only 40 gender clinics among all of the educational institutions in this country. There is a law on higher education, and it's up to the headmaster whether this elective will be there in their school or not. In here, we've got Ms. Golovanova from Zaporozhye University and Tatiana Doronina representing Hreba University. So, through volunteering they prove that it is something that should be done. This subject is only taught in the Faculty of Sociology and Philosophy, but I think those who study law also need to have a good idea of that, because otherwise the judges will be unaware of this matter, and when the respective cases come up, they won't be able to see what's the gender thing in those. I spoke with one of the person in charge of the technical school. He says, "I'm taking care of boys. What gender are you talking about? We're a technical school." But these boys will become engineers, then they will run businesses, later on they will be city mayors, doing politics, and later on they might go up the chain. And yet they will remain gender blind in doing all of that. We've got a plan. We've got a game plan, a strategy of gender awareness 2020. And I can see some of the people who took a couple of years drafting it, experts, researchers, practitioners, and that's the gender strategy which has been around for a couple of years. It's going from one office to the other, and they want to make it better and better, and it's a never-ending process. Good is sometimes better than best. So it's like a lengthy endeavor that we have embarked on. There is so much that we gotta change, and we don't need to overdo it. But we've got a particular plan and understanding. If it's not done at the government level, if there's no strategy, then there's gonna be no budget item on this. This year, we only have money for reviewing the existing programs in preschool education. Next year, we're gonna get some more money, and then we're gonna do more than that. If it doesn't happen this way, then we will have to work even harder. All right, little steps lead to bigger cause. All right, so let's see, is there any game plan in the Ministry of Education? Roman Hreba, Deputy Minister of Education. I know that right now you are in the middle of the ongoing education reforms. There are issues and things to take care of, but is there any way of addressing gender issues? Thank you. It is a pleasure to be in this audience right now, where people are willing to see changes and they speak of gender parity in this. I'll say a few words about myself. I am a part of the Ukrainian society, as all of us, and I also have certain stereotypes which are shared across the country. Previous panelists spoke things which might be called stereotypes. I'm not going to go back to all of them. And secondly, I would say I have been lucky to have women in managerial positions in my career. Maybe it's not a typical case. My first boss was a woman, and in the Prime Minister office there was a boss, Svitlana, a woman. She is in this audience right now. The minister in the cabinet of ministers, Denysenko, was a woman in charge of me. So I'm an untypical man in this sense, and I have been lucky to be under the guidance of female bosses. If we look at the gender priority and women, then again we build a stereotype out of that. Maybe it's going to sound a surprise, but gender parity is not about women. It is also about men in many ways. It's a way for men to be themselves. If men get pigeonholed like they are courageous, they have to be a breadwinner, they have to show valor, they have to be courageous and so on. But some of them may not be like that. They want to be sitting around at home, raising kids and being happy doing that. So these are complicated issues, and we have to remove those stereotypes in Ukrainian society, because everything starts with education. You build a personality in educational settings. It starts with a kindergarten. So what's our plan? There are existing regulations which were passed. There is a law on equal rights and opportunities of men and women. There is a government program. All of that is in place. The Ministry of Education has recently reached out to the community and jointly tried to draft a paper, which is the plan we're talking about. We set up a working group. 24 experts on gender parity have put together this document, this paper. We also drafted the comprehensive gender component in education. It's called Gender Strategy 2020. But there are some stereotypes there too. It has been okayed by all central executive agencies. It's a nice product. But then we submitted it to the Cabinet of Ministers of the Ukraine, and then lawyers came up with their stereotype in the Cabinet of Ministers. They cannot think of feminitives. It's a new verbiage, it's not mentioned in the Ukrainian legislation. It's like minister is teacher is, and now this thing should become a part of Ukrainian law. It's very untypical, and lawyers tell us, hey, come on guys, you see, we don't have that sort of stuff. We cannot say teacher is, doctor is, what are you doing? And that's what women are saying, which are within the stereotypes. So we have to overcome these stereotypes. We need to establish feminitives. Well, in Ukrainian, feminitives make this language different from, say, Russian language. So it's also the reason why we should perhaps use feminitives in Ukrainian.
Наразі ми знаходимося так, у нас йде одна єдина суцільна реформа освіти. Це і середня освіти,
So there are ongoing reforms in the high school education, vocational education, higher education. So in high school education, we're speaking about the reform of the new Ukrainian high school. So it's going to be a competency-based school.
бачите,
And
у
the
нас
Prime Minister of this country
знає і таке поняття як гендерна компетенція.
about
Тобто він
gender
вже
competency.
володіє зразу двома сферами.
So
І гендер
it's
темою
good. He knows
в курсі
about
гендерного
gender in
паритету,
terms of
і в
gender
курсі реформи
parity
нової
and
української
also in
школи.
terms of reforms
Всі
of
документи,
Ukrainian high
концепції реформи
school.
нової української школи, які готовляться в рамках
All
цієї
of the
реформи,
documents
вони
prepared
проходять
in this
гендерну
reform
експертизу. Це
get
і державні програми, це і
scrutinized for
державні
gender
стандарти, і
components, so
навчальні
it's
програми,
government
і
standards
матеріали,
and
і посібники, всі вони
curriculum
будуть
materials,
проходити гендерну
syllabi,
експертизу, і
teaching
ті, що
aids, all of
розробляються, вже
those
їх
will
пройшли
be
частково. Тобто в цьому
verified
напрямку ми
to make
також
sure
рухаємося.
they carry a gender
Вперше в
component.
Україні закріплено принцип
In
обов'язкової
Ukraine, there is a principle of
антидискримінаційної експертизи
anti-discriminatory
підручників.
expert
Вже
assessment
проведено
of textbooks.
таку експертизу
We
підручників для
have
8 і 9
done it for
класу,
the
які видаються
textbooks
за
for the
державні
grades
кошти.
8 and
Проведено
9,
експертизу близько
released at the
90
expense of the
підручників для
government.
8 класу і близько 180
So we
підручників
sifted through
для
many
9
textbooks
класу.
for 8th and
Створюються
9th graders.
гендерні осередки також у
We
вищій
set up
освіті.
gender
Так, у нас
settings
поки
in the
немає
higher
спеціальності,
education. Right now we don't have the profession of the gender parity experts, but there is an ongoing discussion of that. A conservative society is typically found in the education sector. If you ask a couple of educators, they will share so many ideas, and it is hard to get something new done or introduce new professions. But we're moving on to that. It all starts with a discussion. We have had some roundtables, and little by little this society is getting used to this subject, which is sensitive to some in the Ukrainian society. It's like a gender parity, but little by little we understand that it's not about feminism, it's not about women only. It's about equal rights and opportunities at the end of the day, and I'm sure that we're going to take it in our stride. I'm not going to talk about everything that has been done. I'm sure that together we can make it happen. We've got powerful members of the Ukrainian society of either gender that are seen in this audience, and I guess that will help us make it happen. The gender parity will be there in the Ukraine, and we will be a showcase for the rest of Europe and even the
Є до
world.
вас ще одне запитання.
There's one more
Все-таки
question
мені
for you.
цікаво, коли в Україні буде більше
When will the
вихователів,
Ukraine
більше
get more
вчителів?
teachers?
Ви знаєте, я коли була в Швеції і
When
бачила
I
в
was in
дитячих садочках
Sweden,
виходять
I
діти
visited
на
their
прогулянку, ви знаєте, вони
kindergartens.
там
I
цілими
can
днями гуляють,
I could
дощ,
see
сніг, вони
kids
гуляють.
in the
От вони йдуть
kindergartens.
зі своїх
They
пачок,
walk
це
out
зелене.
in the street, no matter the weather. And I have seen men working in kindergartens. In Ukraine, it's mostly women working there. Will this happen in this part of the world? Yes, it will. When? How are you going to incentivize the men to do it? It's a matter of prestige of this job and the society attitude to that. It's not a question to the education sector. It's a question to everybody, like what a woman would think of a man working in the kindergarten. What will his family and parents think about that? It's a matter of perception. If working in the kindergarten will be fun and prestigious for either sex, then we will admit having overcome this gender stereotype, and then we're going to get new teachers in kindergartens. Many men are now making teachers, high school teachers. They are the global change agents right now. In some organizations, it's moving on. As this prestige goes up, as well as the paycheck, we're going to get more men doing this. Right now, men in the Ukraine earn more than women. It cannot be like that. It is not supposed to be like that. But right now, it is like that. When we establish equal work conditions, then men will take all of those positions. All right, so from education, let's move on to the media. And with this, I'm turning over to Tatiana Kuznetsova. She runs the journalism faculty at the Academy of Law. When I was admitted to the journalism faculty department, there was 80% of girls studying there. Where it's at with this right now? And secondly, as a teacher, are you concerned about the gender developments in this?
Good afternoon. I'm glad to see all of you here. Before I answer your question, I'm working a second day in this Congress, and I'm troubled by the fact that our dear men still are not serious towards the gender problem. Even in certain hours, speakers Even in some of male speakers, I hear among the words some signs of sexism, and until we are sure that the gender issue is a problem of men and not only women, until we understand that, we won't change anything. About 15 years ago, well, I was still a participant in the conference on gender issues, and my colleague journalist who my colleague asked me, who is this gender? People talk about it so much. And together with my students, I started to conduct gender studies. Then I started to conduct workshops, trainings, and at the time nobody could answer one of the riddles. The riddles was the following. A father and a son got into a car crash. An ambulance came. The boy was taken to the hospital. The father was still there, and when the son in the hospital, when he was seen by the surgeon said, "Oh my God, that's my son." And the people couldn't answer that riddle, and about 35% of girls answer this riddle quite easily. They say that the surgeon is the mother, but at the same time, the stereotype is still in the head, and the stereotypes are deeply ingrained. And until we change these stereotypes, beginning even not just from kindergartens, today we're grown-ups, we still think with stereotypes. Today we read the media and we often see the stereotype information. I'm a little bit of a scientist. I conduct studies, and I was interested in the fact who is still represented in the pages of the media. Lots of studies are being conducted on this topic, and even when I meet editors, journalists, what's your attitude towards this problem? So one of the editors said, "What, do we have problems?" I said, "All right, I monitor your press, and in 6 months I conduct monitoring, and I said I would like you to reacquaint you. What is your image of a woman in the media? A, beautiful. B, a caring person." This badge of success was only applied to successful sports women, and this was rarely shown in other spheres. And the man was always successful, smart, the hero of our time, and so on and so forth. And I was interested in the question, how do you write about men and women in history? We are different. Men and women are two parts of the same puzzle. We are different. We even see the same things differently. We may speak of this differently, but these two views, perspectives can help change something, solve some issues. Also, the situation from New York Times when one article came out about the rape of a small girl by boys, and when the article came out, then journalists presented information that really the rape happened. This girl, which was 15 years old, looked a bit older than her age, and the boys are to be greatly punished. The readers were worried by this information, and the editor makes a decision that has to conduct a study, and then the material comes out written by a woman. This female journalist shows that this girl, and shows the pictures of a bed which had toys. This girl liked life, she liked to play, and when this story was to be united from the points of view of boys and girls, we saw an objective picture of what actually happened and what's going to happen. And still we have 80% girls on journalism faculties. And my point of view is this is not the primary thing. What matters is which of the stereotypes are in here and how to remove them. And right now we have step by step everyone, starting from today, have to turn their attention on how do we perceive, how do we speak, how do we feel each other. There were huge sociological studies, and this is a very popular topic in sociology, studying the index of happiness of different countries. And there is data proving that those countries where gender equality is a high index, these are the happier countries. I think that when this gender equality will be there, then not just women will be happy, but men as well. If the woman is happy, the man is happy. the man who spends more time with the family, that family has more successful children, they are better performing in school, they are ill less of the time, and there are lots of studies that these gender issues are in here, and it would be pretty cool if we right now made a decision on a legal level in the ministries, started to implement this into life, but I'm convinced that we need to do this, to do self-education when we move on to media, when journalists themselves don't see that there is this issue and we intuitively present the information and right. Who is the first expert? Female expert. The last studies about on the media this year was about 17%, but I have a question, dear men, who taught you? Women taught you. You were taught by wonderful educators, wonderful female experts. How many PhDs we have, which are so wonderful, who can really analyze, give information, but why? Right now we don't have a lot of these experts. A lot of studies are conducted who comes to the TV studios and evaluates certain situations, gives certain answers, and I believe that if we have to want to change something here in the heads, then the media, we prepare the people who present information, and we don't write separately that this is a female news, this is male news, this is for the people. This has to be presented in a balanced fashion, in a correct fashion, then we can change something, and that's why I believe that we should, even if we're talking about feminism, we have to learn how to speak. That's why, because sometimes a woman may arrive at an agreement, a woman has a certain talent, she may prove, she may convince, and that is an opportunity that has to be used. That's why I like very much this fable about a boy running to his job and sees an old grandpa, an old man who's blind, who has a hat with the sign "Help," a blind person. He threw a couple coins. By the end of the day, the boy comes home, and this old blind man recognizes him by his footsteps. Young man, I'm sorry. People were throwing money. What did you change in the writing? You changed something in writing. Mm-hmm. Well, there was written on his little piece of paper is that it's spring outside, and I can see this, and that's why how the information is presented. It's important, and that's why I think it will be important. Maybe the next Congress, whether it will be just a Women's Congress, but until we realize, men, first of all, that this is our issue. We want equal opportunity for men and for women and men, and that's why my dream is for our country to have the highest index of happiness. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tatiana. Yes, we all want all to be happy, and right now let's move on to the topic of media in more detail, and I would like to present our international guest. This is Jehmu Greene. I would like to ask you about the role of the woman in the more global sense. Велике дякую, я так рада бути сьогодні тут. Я була тут десь 3 роки назад, працювала з NGI та організацією поваги, щоб побачити. І я дуже рада бачити прогрес, який був зроблений. Ви всі маєте собі поаплодувати самі собі. Це чудово, неймовірно, цей конгрес.
I want to start by talking about the good news and the bad news. I'll start first with the bad news. The bad is all over the world, women are fighting for equal pay. All over the world, in the US, in other countries, women are fighting against stereotypes in the media. We are all in this together. And this struggle has been long. It has been generations long. There have been leaders working on these issues for decades. And there has been progress made, but we are still in this hole. That's the bad. The good news is what is happening in this moment. in the United States, in Ukraine, in the UK, in Saudi Arabia, something has changed in the atmosphere. Something has changed to where we are here today at the first Women's Congress. In the United States, women are standing up and speaking against their harassers and abusers for the first time, and accountability is being had. It was like the world went to sleep and woke up, and women said, enough. And that is the good news, because we know that change doesn't happen overnight. We know that there have been so many incremental, small steps to get us to this place. But also when it comes to social change, especially around issues of equality, there are moments where change is going to happen faster. And we are in one of those moments. And what do we do with that moment? I think that's the question we all have to answer as individuals, as organizations, as leaders. And I think the answers that have been discussed here at the Congress and in my conversations with NDI and women journalists who are naming sexism, they are shaming it to change it, they're coming up with campaigns. We are taking advantage of this moment. And one of the great things is to have male allies. So it's great to have a male feminist on this panel. Can I call you a feminist? Can I call you a feminist?
Yes, of course.
So let me ask the audience, how many feminists are in the room? Raise your hand. Interesting. Okay, let me ask it this way. How many people in this audience believe men and women should have equal rights? Raise your hand. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all feminists. If we believe in that gender equality, and it's an interesting thing, language, the way feminists as a word is either embraced or pushed away. We have that same dynamic in the United States. And there's a reason for that. The media. The media shapes society. It shapes the way we think about ourselves. And certainly education has a lot to do with it. But when you think of the hundreds of thousands of messages that we get every single day from the media, the role that that plays, and you cannot tell the whole story if you leave out half of the population. And so that is why having women, not just in front of the camera as reporters or as anchors, is important. It's important to have women as executives in the media. It is important to have women producing the story. The people who decide what stories are going to be covered are the same people who decide how they are going to be covered, the language that's going to be used. And in the US, we have a situation where more women are going to journalism schools. Women are the majority of graduates of journalism schools. If you look at television news programs, you'll always see either more women or at least 50% women. But behind the scenes, the media executives, it's something like 3% are women, the decision makers. And so we do have a lot of work to do to make sure that the decision makers, the people who are controlling the narrative, controlling the stereotypes, enforcing our implicit bias, that we are also, as women, as leaders, as voices of equality, as feminists, that we are part of that as well. And so I want to congratulate you on the first Congress and also on what I know will be many more to come, and say in solidarity as a global movement, I don't think I've ever been more optimistic about what we can accomplish. And so congratulations on being a part of that movement and in many ways being a part of it from a leadership perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Я би дуже зараз хотіла продовжити нашу дискусію, і ми плавно переходимо до Інни Кузнєцової, яка є головна редакторка Київського бюро Радіо Свобода. Це міжнародне медіа в Києві, в Україні. У вас, напевно, з гендером там все нормально?
Давайте я почну з того, що коли я вступала на факультет журналістики, на факультеті журналістики було 50/50. І коли я прийшла на практику після першого курсу, я ще цього нікому не казала, але зараз скажу. Мені один журналіст місцевий в районній газеті сказав: яка журналістика? Вийдеш заміж, розкоровієш і забудеш про всю свою журналістику. Бачите, ну, бувало. Зараз я кілька разів там трошки маю погодинне викладання в інституті журналістики. Кілька разів я сказала, в одному семестрі там кілька годин, в іншому більше годин.
I do different number of hours per semester, but it doesn't matter. When I come to the audience, there might be one young man, the rest are young ladies. In the other audience, I could see a few more boys because they were from the military institute, which is a part of Shevchenko University, and that's where you get mostly men, so they came to study in that audience. So in journalism, you still see mostly girls. Why so? As Roman was saying, it's a low-paid job. This might be one of the reasons. I didn't look into that profoundly enough, but I think it might be a strong reason. Some individual journalists and reporters might be low paid, so it's a typical situation in this sector, which is why men are not attracted that much. There are changes, and yes, we still have a lot of women in journalism. Even in the universities, you get a lot of female students in journalism, but not all of them make editors. They come, they study, and then they go and work elsewhere. Some are doing PR, some are doing advertisement, some do something totally different from what they were taught to do. Speaking of the gender in education, I think we can think of media literacy and education as such. Speaking of education as such and stereotypes, remember the video, there was a stereotype. We spoke about a girl. We did not say that boys also go to schools and they get taught there by the same people. And that to me is the origin of a stereotype. Olena spoke of Sweden. I also was there. I could see men working in kindergartens as teachers, and then in the church I could see the female priest taking care of the marriage ceremony. To me it was unthinkable, but out there it's all right. I don't know if we ever get there. I brought along one book this time, and I brought it along to this Congress, and me and my husband still attend the district library on weekend. And I once noticed this book there. It is called The End of Feminism. But then it continues, what's the difference between a woman and a human being? Luckily, it has not been released in the Ukraine. It was released in Russia in 2006 or 2008. In 2008. It may have been somebody's gift to the district library, but it was displayed there in plain sight. And I took a browse over just out of curiosity. There was a mention of feminitives, there was some American experience, you know, which way they call somebody like a police officer to avoid a feminative. but it is also common to us in some way. Speaking of media literacy, there is an existing textbook on that, and it says that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you just have to follow the rules. And here comes the question, who makes with the rules, and are they accurate enough? That's not an easy thing. We just spoke of feminitives, and I think there's going to be jarring opinions about that. I remember a year after the Orange Revolution, and two women attended my show on TV. They were publicly elected MPs, and I thought they would kill me right there in the studio. They represented different factions. They were opposing each other, but both attacked me as MPs verbally. And later on, the word female MP sounds a lot more natural than it did back in the day. But personally, I didn't like the editor, but I like the female journalist a bit better. Well, some things sound pretty funny at first, and we have to be very careful. We have to think it all over so that it's not going to be ridiculous and out of place. Because some words just do not sound nice, and that's why it will thwart everything good we wanted to do. Some would say, philologists might say whatever they want. Philologists themselves typically say that sometimes it can be this way, sometimes it can be some other way. If we take the word ambassador, what can we do about that if it's a female ambassador? Ambassador cannot be said the same way in Ukrainian as it sounds in English. Well, some people do that, but it's not quite right. If we are supposed to use a Ukrainian word for that, I don't know, maybe we will just say ambassador. But on Facebook, somebody told me, try ambassadress. Or they came up with other funny ways of saying this. And somebody else on Facebook would tell me, like someone who is on the ball, he would say, you would say, Miss Ambassador. But all of that is discussable, but it all is not easy. Okay, thank you very much, ambassadresses and editoresses. All right, over to Larysa Denysenko now. She is a writer, a journalist. She does advocacy, and she brought along an issue of a magazine. The article is called, "What is it that women never speak about?" Many say nowadays that women in the media might hit the headlines, they should be a top model, a showcase, a role model. But tell me, speaking of the top-rated women, female writers, what are they? Are they pretty much the same, like good-looking role models? What are the female characters that are loved these days in books? Thank you very much. I appreciate this event. It's the first time it is happening. But I'd like to start off with a couple of things about things that I heard from my fellow colleagues. Deputy Minister, you say that education sector is not prestigious for men, and that was a surprise to hear that. Well, not all men will be deputy ministers. They follow the same pathway as everybody else, as women in the sector. Starting with the kindergarten is a natural thing. This profession is indeed low paid for both. That's the key problem. But speaking of stereotypes, you know, 85% of people, when they picture a defense attorney or a judge, they typically picture a man. So sometimes my clients, well, I'm a defense attorney, So sometimes my clients can see that in the bar you get more than 50% women. Judges also make up 50% female judges. And that helps us overcome existing stereotypes. Speaking of characters, they are diverse. I mean, if we speak about mass literature, that's like a love romance, love story, and that's where you get different characters. And they can be strong women, women of willpower, or women in danger that have to go through a lot. If we look at Daniela Steele, it's about a woman which gets hard put in personal and professional life, but she gets rescued and her husband helps her out of the misery, and that's a bestseller in the literature now. But let's recall other models in books in which a woman is a paragon and she supports the entire world, and somebody else, either a man or a woman, helps her do that, and they take over some of that burden. So if we put our shoulder underneath this world, then we're gonna help our kids get a better deal, because they will follow our pathway and they will see what is equal responsibility and equal attitude. And now I'm gonna make a point about the significance. So we're living in the media world where there are significant ideas that come from MPs, from Ella Lubanova, Yulia Mostovaya, Anna Yudkovskaya, Ludmila Grinevich, Irina Bekeshkina. But on the other hand, it's not so much that the media is interested in. When a popular singer says something, that becomes a buzzword, a soundbite. So women tell something, nobody cares, and men say something, that becomes something that hits headlines. Let's look at the research done by the Institute of Mass Media to see who are the key characters in the mass media right now, and who are the experts and expertresses invited to the studio or get quoted from in the printed media. It's about 27% of women in total, and the rest are men. In socio-political shows, experts are about 5% of women. That's across 8 major TV channels in the Ukraine. So you are welcome to go to the website of the Institute or Povaga website. You will see that women are 50% of Ukraine's success. And I'm thinking how it can be changed. There is a soft way of doing that, and there are sanctions. I've got a legal background, and I'm in favor of soft influence, not sanctions. So I think we can publicly reach out the editors-in-chief and their fellow colleagues, and we can go all the way up the chain to the general producers in all central TV channels and active media, and tell them to go and take part in the public discussions. We've got statistics and monitoring findings. Tatiana was saying that they're looking to see who gets highlighted in the media, who gets covered by the media. Let's try and see what the situation is like this. If we speak of changes in the editorial policy, it is clear that there is a need to turn that policy around at the level of the collective agreement to begin with. Gender sensitivity is not an inborn feature, so it takes knowing some information and practicing exercising empathy. You can learn to do it. You can learn to practice it. You just have to be more attentive when it comes to inviting an expert to the studio. Do not think about the name. Typically the experts will be men, because the top media airtime will feature mostly men. But the second wave in the media might carry feminine names, and there should be a balance between the two. I'm not saying that men should not be invited there and we should be totally focused on women. That's not the idea. But there should be a healthy balance between the two. which is missing in the media right now. I don't want women to be for tabloids only, somewhere on the back burner. I effectively would like women to become a part of the contents of top stories and top headlines which address all sorts of subject matters in the media. And speaking of, again, sanctions, we might end up practicing that. We might draft a regulation which will set quotas and sanctions. When we speak about the freedom of speech, I'd like for all of us in the media to understand that we are responsible for the freedom of speech. We have to make it happen. And in this sense, I'd like to suggest that we all pitch in and hold a discussion over that. Sanctions are the matter of last resort, but it should not be the top priority measure. We've got a strong lobby in the Parliament. And again, speaking of the goodwill and freedom of speech, I'd like to hear about the stereotypes and phobias. Like, what is it that people are afraid of? Why do you get so few women in the media? And speaking of the managerial positions, it's the same problem there. But I wonder why it's happening like that. You get diverse venues and you typically have male dominance there. Although statistics suggest that women account for 50% of Ukrainian citizens. That's all of us, daughters, sisters, mothers, teachers, and we all are in here. But why our voices are not heard? That's not fair. I'm in favor of fairness. So I guess everybody is in favor of fairness in this country, no matter the sex or gender identity. As an editor, I should say that there is truth in what you say, and typically you get experts, male experts, because you get most of them in the government. Yulia Mostovaya attended the celebration of 25 years of independence. I invited her to get interviewed. I spent 3 months doing that. I kept calling her, and she finally came. And I really respect her. I read pieces authored by Ella Libanova as well. But women are reluctant to come to get interviewed on TV. Like, I'm not looking good right now. I need my hairdo done. I need to get dressed appropriately. Yeah, that's what it takes. That all is correct. Inviting a man to do it is a lot easier. If we have 5 shows per day and I'm thinking whether I need to call Ella 100 times or Mr. Berezovets just a few times, and he will come to all of the shows and say what he thinks, that's how it happens, you know. That's where it's at. He doesn't need to get the nail job done, yeah. But still, as you said, you mentioned Mr. Berezovets. I've seen him really so many times on TV. Ella Libanova showed up a few times. I can keep calling her and she will finally show up. While monitoring the press, we could see things like grandmothers, aunts, broads, anything, any way in which women are addressed or mentioned. Okay. I can tell you that you are not supposed to be the grandfather. It's too bad if you're sleeping with a grandmother. Okay, Irina Gerasymiuk wanted to ask a question. Is that for me? I want to make a remark first, then a question. I'm fully supportive of Inna. We indeed should be really careful about feminism, because there is a lot of artificial stuff. Sorry, I meant feminitives. There is one MP which has a very deep voice and she speaks to me like that. And I'd like to say that's just the way he does it. And sometimes it doesn't sound right if we speak about the status of a woman. So he mispronounces my name sometimes, and if we take the word member, we better say either Miss MP or something else. But we should not overdo it, because this might repel many people, and it will not do good. Jointly with Olena Froliak, we got admitted to the university quite a while ago, and I couldn't see 80% of women, 20% of men. With us it was like 50-50. But we took a course on international journalism for 10 people only. That was back in the USSR, and at that time only men were selected for the course, not a single woman. Now we speak with them. I'm looking at these international reporters, and it's funny. Like, I toured the world so many times, but many of these guys are still doing something in the theory of international journalism. I have a question for Inna and Olena and an overseas guest. So a question to you as journalism colleagues. I guess we cannot turn the situation around, and we cannot overcome sexism and gender stereotypes because the journalism in this country itself, the media, are not interested in that. Yesterday, many reporters came to me after the panel one, and they wanted to interview me, and they had just two questions for me. The first one is about the hostages, and the second one is about the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. My journalistic background helped me. I spoke about gender equality to them. They do not think it's important. They do not think it is something that is a priority to our media. And female journalists, which prevail in journalism over men, say that politicians make things up. Equality is not the priority. Why do we need quotas? We're doing fine without them. If you're talented, you can build a good career. You can go up the ladders of the career growth because you want to make it happen. But they fail to realize that in journalism, rules are slightly different. It's all about democracy. There are not so many stereotypes, and that's where you get more equality between men and women. So don't you think that in politics, we're doing an important work in order to overcome the stereotypes? But I think we need more help from the media, from you. They spoke of education, but not education of journalism, journalists. We need to let them know that journalism has its specific trait, and that's where you get more equality, fewer stereotypes. So it's better in this sense than anywhere else in education. Okay, let's start with Inna. Speaking about the programs and whether we place a focus on gender, I guess we do, and not too many do that. I'm not saying because we're partners, it is because there's such a mission of the Freedom Radio, and gender equality is a mission, just as human rights, women's rights, any sorts of rights. That's among our key things. And as far as I know, the Radio Freedom reporter yesterday would put some other questions and she would write a piece about something else. Well, maybe she heard the story about the hostages and she covered that as well, but she might have put a different spin on that, which would fit the news section. Speaking of stereotypes and how journalists go about it, I'm going to speak from the experience of one of the TV channels. Some journalists told an athlete on the air, "You're looking so great." How could she do it, was the question. If she told the man the same thing, would she be wrong? I mean, it would be an identical situation. So in that case, a stereotype came up. The editor suggested she was not supposed to say it to the female athlete. So it's a very fine line all the time. In the journalism, there's also such a thing that if you are on camera You have to look beautiful, look good, otherwise nobody will be watching that show or that story. And that's a big problem. Maybe again it's a stereotype, but it has been around for years. If someone's face is not looking good for some reason, and they try and distinguish that in some way, I'm not speaking about the reporters, but about the TV show participants. It does happen, and we need to reckon with that. In journalism, you get a lot of women. Some said it's not so many, but it's a lot of them there. And I remember one colleague reporter telling me, like in one story, he was supposed to be the voice of 3 different men. It was actually a translation, a voiceover from the other language, because he was the only man in the editorial office to do it. That's also a problem sometimes. I think Irina asked this question of everybody, including myself. Okay, I'd like to have Gemma give us her answer or opinion. Gemma, you're welcome. Мені до вподоби журналісти. Я думаю, що вони говорять про те, про що слід говорити, але також мені до вподоби ЗМІ, які демократизуються. Коли якийсь репортаж доносиш, то це вже не тільки робиться заради журналістики, це вже заради громадян. Є в нас і Фейсбук, є в нас і Твіттер, і соціальні мережі, і медіа, є смартфони. Адже громадяни таким чином отримують більше можливостей, ніж колись, щоб побачити, що я кажу в США. Це я і ЗМІ, я і медіа. Отже, в нас таким чином громадяни, журналісти можуть всі бачити ті стереотипи в газетах, в новинах і сказати, ні, це невірно, це так не має бути. І вони можуть тиснути на редакторів і на журналістів в цілому, і в тому, я думаю, є те гарне, що ми маємо на сьогодні. І мені сподобалася ця дискусія щодо того, які зміни відбуваються, чи ми маємо санкції накладати або м'які варіанти відшуковувати. Для змін потрібно і те інше. Потрібні люди, які будуть працювати зсередини, пліч-опліч і співпрацювати один з одним. Але для того, щоб дійти до змін, які ми хочемо побачити в плані гендерної рівності,
we also need people pushing from the outside, and we need those citizen journalists to call it out when they see something that is wrong. We need, I think journalists themselves also want that support so that they can do a better job and tell a better story. So we all in this room and the people we work with, we can all be journalists and we can all tell a better story.
Запитання до мене. Ви знаєте, я вам чесно скажу, можливо, зараз скажу якусь крамолу, але мені здається, що ми зараз живемо в час, коли творчістю на телебаченні керує маркетинг.
Creativity on TV is under pressure from marketing. Some say you don't have to tell that getting inoculated for the flu is the only way to live flu-free. Nobody is gonna watch that. ICTV is seen like a men's channel. And market research people say, let's make the stories that are going to be good both for men and women. And I go like, tell me what's going to be watched by men and women. There should be something like that. Children watch those stories, and then moms and dads will watch that too. So for as long as we resist that pressure from marketing, we're going to be able to make something happen. Near Kyiv, there is a village, I don't remember the name of that. Over 36 years, a woman has been in charge of that village in the village hall. And we made a nice story of that. It was well read on TV. That woman was so good. Everything is asphalted. Streets are well lit. People are having smiles on their faces. And she says, you know, I'm asking them to get things done. I get in touch with them, ask them for funding, I establish rapport with them. Men will never condescend to doing that. She's taking care of many things, and she's not corrupt, she's not having any back alley deals. She's 36 right now. So ICTV channel and my show is about successful women, female leaders. And if we call you up, do not diss us. Get interviewed by us. Come to our shows. We're not gonna show your poor nail job. On TV, on camera, you're always looking better, more emotional, more responsible. You make airtime better, but sometimes you just do not show up. So we're open to women all the time, although we are believed to be a man's channel. I'd like to have it from Larysa and Tatiana now. Speaking of teaching journalists to be gender sensitive, me and Irina Slavinska authored a guidance on gender-sensitive journalism, which can be downloaded for free from Povaga website. But there are certain things, and Olena spoke of some, which are of shared interest, and it's important to articulate that to make people aware of that. Say, violence. Yesterday we spent the entire afternoon discussing the ratification of the Istanbul Convention on Domestic Violence. Domestic violence concerns everybody, and finally Новое Время magazine looked at it as a social market, which covers men and actually everyone, but primarily women. Statistics suggest that female victims are about 90%. But let's remember that there are men and children affected by that, and it actually clearly suggests that that's a good story. You can put a particular spin on that, and you will gain more readership. And nowadays, even glossy editions, glossy magazines are changing. Some of them are released by multimedia companies across the world, and they carry a section on social responsibility, so they place articles and pieces, and women's magazines are changing their policy too. And some of the glossy magazines in the Ukraine are also doing this way. I can think of, say, a piece by Irina Vertosa about violence in families of ex-combatants, and she has been awarded for that story, for that piece. So these subjects are kind of marginal, unpopular. It's hard to make a good story out of that. But if you do it professionally, if you get noticed, then you will gain readership and millions of people will get the point. Some people are actually affected by this, but they never recognize it, never admit to that. But that's going to be a good story for them. Speaking of literacy of journalists, unfortunately, right now you get lots of editorial offices that should be trained to be more literate in what they do. Monitoring findings clearly suggest that if we offer that training, they do better, but we have to keep on this way. Typically, it's an initiative of some NGOs here and there. There is no comprehensive program on that. In recent years, there have been good guidances and other materials offered by different platforms. So they need to learn to study. I attended some of the training sessions and meetings, and they told the journalists that you have to up your skill. And the journalist says, I've got so many diplomas, why should I do that? You keep learning every day, and you gotta keep on this way. And you need to find some good topics for stories. There are so many problems around, and you have to be able to cover them adequately in a quality manner, so that it would be everybody's concern. Then we're going to achieve more equality and balance. We've got 14 minutes to go.
Добрий день, Ковиляна Тетяна. Я
Hello, Tatiana Kavilina. I'm with the Zaporozhye Regional Council, and I'm an advisor to the governor on education and science. I really appreciate the organizers of this event because I'm getting an increasingly improved idea of the gender, and I'm becoming increasingly gender sensitive. One of my take-home points is that gender stereotypes have a sectoral background. And I'd like to speak about the gender feature which we have in the local TV in my region. You know, we never get invited to speak on the local TV. In Zaporozhye Council, there are 17 councilwomen, and we organized the caucus there. And right now, Zaporozhye region has become a leader in Ukraine in terms of the number of caucuses that have been created. But we did it thanks to this existing caucus of women in the Supreme Council. We appreciate the initiative. Also thanks to the NDI, and we took part in some of the shows, and in those shows they never addressed gender-sensitive perception across society. So thanks to these individual projects, they could see us, they could hear us, and the journalism right now is not the fourth branch of gender power. I will call you up, I will invite you, you got my word. Okay, I've seen a question from there. I have a question for the Deputy Minister Hreba. What are you going to make with the mandatory programs in the journalism departments which will address gender equality? We spoke of some facts which allow us to say that journalists are not gender sensitive very often, and soon television will no longer be watched, I'm afraid, because it will be filled with stereotypes and sexist statements. And a question to Larysa and everybody else. You say that only sanctions can help improve editorial policy. Well, if sanctions are not in the appropriate way, how else can we make changes?
Дякую за запитання. Сьогодні вже багато ми говорили, і багато говорилось про свідомість і про самосвідомість.
We spoke about the conscientiousness and responsibility and perceptions. If we speak about mandatory programs and this and that, I always say there's going to be none, because it is the ongoing reform of the higher education. The ministry will not meddle in the operations of universities. The ministry approves education standards for higher education, tertiary education, and then within those standards, a particular university or whatever chooses programs, shapes up particular professions they see needed. So it's an autonomy of an individual university at the end of the day. If we've got a growing need for that, then the universities need to realize that there is a demand for those professionals in the market, and they will teach them, and then they will implement respective programs. But it's not the ministry that is supposed to do that. We're not going to make anyone do that. We set up incentives and equal opportunities, and all the rest is up to the universities and education service providers. If in the Faculty of Journalism they want to establish a course like that, but you need to pay somebody to do it, who's going to fund that? You do not make anyone do anything, but what's the way? They should put together a syllabus which features the course on gender parity or gender sensitivity, and then it becomes a part of the curriculum. That's how it goes. I don't rule out sanctions, you know. I can't rule them out. It might be an option at the end of the day. But I think the journalistic community is pretty active, at least I believe in that. And I guess there are lots of journalists of either gender. There is an existing commission on journalistic ethics, and we have to abide by standards of respect and tolerance and gender parity and sensitivity. And it should not be discussed in here as a platform, as a panel, but we need to invite everybody else to take part in this discussion. I'd like for it to be a public deliberation. In the editorial office, it might be one deal. Like I'm responsible for my office in the public radio, we abide by all standards about gender sensitivity and equality, and everybody takes part in that, and people change because of that. The journalists think about that, and they change their ways. They exercise respect and other things mentioned in the standards. So there's nothing special to us in that sense. It's not too hard to do, and I guess everybody else can do the same. We have to stand out for that together. And maybe female journalists as well as male journalists, which are feminists, will also chime in, and they will keep raising this matter all the way up the chain, so that it's not going to be something ridiculous, and it's not going to be a way of putting the gender on the back burners, but in fact, gender sensitivity will become a standard of operational procedures, including ethics and everything else, and that's going to be the way to go. If that's going to be the way to go, then it's good. Otherwise, you might have to think of sanctions anyway. Okay, we've got 7.5 minutes to go. A question from you, lady, please. Любов Рогатинська.
Трошки активнічою, тому що недостріляний гулаг, де залишились кращі. Приходиться руку піднімати за себе інших. Прекрасні можливості піднімати родоводи. Виявляється, наш пан Зубко має таке князівське коріння. Тобто ми дуже багато не знаємо про коріння. Тема родоводів. У мене просто друга верхня соціальна освіта з права викладання.
The thing is this, Jerzy Hoffman was interested in the series of some families which have been around for hundreds of years in this part of the world, and he was interested in their origins, their predecessors. Kiev Rus might be a good example of that. But when there is a crisis of values, I think we might think of Ukrainian priorities. There is a Ukrainian development model. On TV, person spoke about that. We spoke about that in UNESCO too. Well, I don't know if we could do better with this. Thank you. Over here, please. Question from here.
Я хочу два запитання. Перше.
Rada TV channel airs discussions of different panels. How come they never show the discussion of gender strategy in the education sector? And secondly, we came up with a gender clinics program for masters, but they say there is no profession on gender in the job classifier. There is nothing that mentions gender there, so that's why these programs cannot be approved. You say it's up to the individual university, but I don't know how can they do it. I can say that Rada TV channel is our partner, and I appreciate what they do. For the first time ever, the channel speaks about that, and yesterday they aired some, and today too. They've got some limits, so our panel will be aired as well, so don't worry. The Ministry of Economic Development is in charge of the job classifier, but I think it's about equal rights for men and women. If we speak about professions for men, professions for women, professions for gender, it's going to be a total mess, I'm afraid. What difference does it make to the expert or teacher? So it should be either a part of all subjects, or it should be a single profession, a separate profession like in the Nordic countries.
Наступно. Прошу, лівий фланг чи правий. Прошу.
Людмила Gavriluk, I'm with Kazatin Local Council. I run the preschool setting. They spoke of stereotypes a lot, but they start with the family. Women do not learn to trust their husbands. In the family, there should be mutual respect and partnership. And because of that, I'm here and my husband is taking care of the handicapped baby. Because of the partnership and because of mutual respect, in our family, we do everything together, and my husband is employed and me too, and we reach new heights in what we do, each of us, and yet we allow the baby to feel like everybody else because it's a handicapped baby, and Will would like to be different from everybody else. A handicapped baby would like to be like everybody else in the first place. So these are the stereotypes, and they can be taken care of in the family relations, and mutual respect. Thank you, Olena, for saying that it all starts in the kindergarten. That's where they upbring the future generation. And sometimes the government entrusts babies to preschool settings, but they do not fund the preschool settings adequately. The teachers in those settings are the lowest paid in the sector. And I appreciate Roman's understanding of that, but when are you gonna allow preschool settings to enjoy a better deal in this education sector? I cannot tell you exactly when it's going to happen in time, but there is such an idea. It's a part of the plans in the ministry. When we have enough budget for that, we're going to make it happen. A question from here, please. I've got a question for Jehmu. I'm Oksana Potapova. I'm an intersection feminist, as she puts it, and typically we speak about gender equality, but pretty often when I speak with fellow colleagues, they say they are in favor of equality and rights, but they're not feminists at the same time. And I'm surprised hearing that. It makes me wonder. I wonder of them why. And Jim actually spoke about that, I guess. And then she would say that this thing is no longer a part of the discourse in the media. Now it's coming back to that discourse because of the media. So let me wonder of you. Is it important to make sure that this word, this notion, be a part of the discourse again? If so, how is it coming back to the discourse? Is it widely used again in your context?
Yes. Feminism is being embraced.
Так, фемінізм вже охоплений в Америці в таких рівнях і цифрах, яких ми раніше не бачили. І багато людей не підняли руку, коли я питала, хто фемініст, не підняли, тому що саме так медіа на сьогодні.
Feminism. And so it is up to the media, it's up to journalists to tell a different story. It's up to everyone in this room to tell a different story about what feminism means to them. And it really does start with our individual storytelling. I want to ask one more question. Raise your hand if you are an expert in this room. And raise your hand if you have been an expert on television, interviewed. So you have been at this Congress for 2 days talking about these gender equality issues, talking about the Istanbul Convention. Every single person in this room is an expert. And I know that Pavaha has a database of experts that people in the media need to know about and they need to use and they need to tap into it. But we also need to raise our hand and say, I'm an expert. I'm going to go and talk about my feminism on television. I'm going to go and talk about my feminism to a journalist. I'm going to tell my story. And that's how we will be able to change the story.
Thank you. Ми маємо право трошечки затримати ще ні? 5 хвилин? Так, от прошу пані в окулярах, прошу вам слово.
Питання до пані Світлани. В кожній області в Україні є філія публічного акціонерного товариства «Суспільне телебачення», яке фінансується з бюджету. Чи повинні вони
Do you think they should follow one of the government policy priorities, which is gender equality? Are they supposed to speak about that on their channel or not? Are they supposed to invite experts to discuss that? Well, MPs cannot affect the editorial policy of any channel, public or private. Well, my idea about quotas and everything is like this. I'm pretty tough on that, and I'm supportive of Larysa Denysenko on this matter. Different societies are at different stages of development. We are at the point when the government has to promote gender equality, stimulate it. Well, the government should take a stance on that. Ministerial people, government people spoke earlier about what they do, like gender budgeting, territorial communities experience. That process is going on in society. We just need to voice it, and then the government will notice it. So I guess the media has the resolution of the Congress, and we need to make a public statement on behalf of all of us. That's going to be a statement to all channel owners and all media outlets. They should be our social partners, because every business has its own social role. And we're going to call upon them to take this idea on board. And next year, they should become possibly our social partners, pursuing gender equality in the Ukraine. But the public channels are supposed to speak of protection of human rights and social issues. It is what they're supposed to do. I don't know if they actually do it. Are they highlighting gender policy? I wonder, because it's about equality, right to equal treatment or attitude, and human rights. Olena, Hreba, I represent a women's organization. I teach history and sociology. I have a question for Roman. We say that there are grassroots and experts that came up with a gender education program, but it's going to be implemented by teachers effectively. So if you say that the 8th of March will no longer be a red letter day, how many female teachers do you think will go out and strike because of that? And would you like for those women to pursue gender education? Here's my point. Men might go back to the education sector. Actually, it used to be only men in the education sector some time ago. So, can we decide on the length of working day for a teacher so that these people will be able to make enough money and they would not have to do 12 to 14 hours per day at work? And the local government would not use these people to participate in protests and so on, because high school teachers cannot say no to local government and they cannot refrain from joining those local activities and protests. So can we actually establish a regular working day for a teacher? Well, I can tell you that I really respect teachers of either sex, and sometimes you look down on them. These people are doing a lot of work. They might be conservative in some way, but what do we do to get them to change their ways? We should not make them do something. We should not fire them. We need to use the agents of change. We're training 2,000 high school teachers that are supposed to show what is the new Ukrainian school. How should teachers do things in these circumstances right now? We want to inspire them to do it, not to force them to do it. And these teachers will understand their social mission, they will understand their role, and they will feel our protection. And we're going to protect them, because there have been reports from the police and so on, but these people will not have to join any local protests or whatever. Nobody will tell them to do it. And yet they're going to be able to show new quality of teaching, and the agents of change will contribute to that. We want to get it done from the bottom. It's going to be like a virus which will get to all of the teachers, and they will become the key drivers of changes in the education sector and society at large. And one last question right now. You, go ahead. Irina Sampan, I'm a journalist, and I used to be the editor-in-chief of the Army FM, the military radio. I'd like to briefly tell you about some of my concerns in terms of military journalism, especially when it comes to working in the ATO. Over the last 4 years, we only had one female spokesperson in the ATO, the rest are men. So it looks like there are no women there, and there's lack of competency. And then let's look at the stories about men. So when they make the stories, it's typically about valor, protection, strength, protection of the homeland. When we speak of military women, then it's typically about beauty, passion of joining the operations of armed forces and so on. And speaking of TV journalists, anchors on TV, they all look good on camera, that's what you mentioned, but they are in the war theater, and yet they have all the makeup and nail job and whatnot. And that distorts the whole thing. I spoke with many military men. It distorts the perception of female journalists that go out and work there, because they go there for some reasons, that's what men say, but they're not coming to do the job, so job is not a priority for them. And I'm afraid it distorts the essence of what the journalist is supposed to do in or near the war theater. And again, I don't know what you think of that, speaking about the military journalism. Okay, Larysa. Well, here is the deal. If we speak about the external manifestations, then men will look at the nail job, hairdo, makeup. If we look at the essence, then you might look whatever you want. If you are a true professional, you don't have to care about your nail job in the first place. I think words will prevail. That will be the major thing. It might be a matter of the dress code and aptitude to be a part of the media. Maybe it's a part of the editorial policy. You can speak with the people out there. If you're gonna go there where the war is going on, you need to see what are the ins and outs, what are the ways of doing things there. There's need for a story, a habit, education. Well, sometimes there is no intrinsic feeling of aptitude to do things there. Anyway, I'm going to be supportive of women there. I don't care how they look like. What matters is what they say, what's their story from there. Thank you. You know, all of the 3 ladies that worked in the ADO, they themselves volunteered to go there.
І я вам чесно кажу, я вперше чую таке про манікюр, про наклеєні вії, про макіяж. Вони постійно нас включаються в ефірі, в мої ефіри, в ефірі інших ведучих. Я вам чесно кажу, я не бачила жодного разу навіть натяку на макіяж, тому що до них приїжджають і кажуть, так, ми зараз виїжджаємо, у нас мало часу, нам треба включитися. Повірте мені, вони останню чергу, напевно, думають, що почесатися, тому що вони дійсно мають комп'ютер. Але вони так само вдягають каску, вони так само вдягають...
wear a gear like the military gear and so on, just to be safe, and the hard hat on their head. So all of these ladies working in the ATO, they come to me saying, I want to go back there again. I say, maybe you should take a break. No, I want to be there again. They understand they're needed there, so they want to keep going back there again and again. Maybe they're gonna find a boyfriend there, that's fine. I would be happy, but they do not go there for that only. Irina used to work there out in the field. She's a military reporter, so she knows what she's talking about. Okay, people are leaving little by little, so it's time for us to wrap it up. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. This panel was education and media, and I'd like to say one thing. We miss professionals in the education sector, in the media sector. Let's make sure we become more proficient. And let me quote from Hillary Clinton, I love and respect her, and she has turned 70 this year. Recently she said, you know, when I was near Obama, the secretary, when I was on the back burner, everybody loved me. Everybody would invite me. I was so popular. As soon as I said I want to make a president, then they would not love me so much any longer. They would look at me differently. She took it in her stride. That loss in elections was a heavy blow, and in her book she says a woman is so strong that it's hard to describe that. Maybe I'm gonna compare her to a tea bag. You never know what kind of tea you get inside the bag until you put it in the boiling water. Thank you.
Дякуємо учасникам за цікаву дискусію, а також пані Олені Фроляк за модерування. Шановні гості, оголошується 15-хвилинна перерва на каву. Пані та панове, за 15 хвилин чекаємо вас у цій залі для участі в наступній дискусійній панелі.